Good morning. Okay, like James said, my name is Josh, and I'm a senior at Rock Island High School. So today I'm going to start by talking about how God has impacted my life this past year, particularly with His grace and forgiveness. So I'm going to take a passage from Luke chapter 15. It's the parable of the prodigal son. Pretty sure you've heard this one before, but I'm just going to read it to refresh your memory. Okay, this is from Luke chapter 15. Now the tax collectors and singers were all drawing near to hear him, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives singers and eats with them." So he told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me." And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread? But I perish here with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found.'" So in Matthew West's newest song, "Grace Wins," if any of you have heard that, his chorus says, "There's a war between guilt and grace, and they're fighting for a sacred space. But I'm living proof that grace wins every time." So when I heard this song for the first time on the radio, these words hit me so hard because my faith has been struggling this past year. And his words show a key point in the persona of God, that God abounds in grace and lavishes that grace upon his people on a daily basis. I'm going to reference in the sermon to the younger son in regards to the parable I just read. So in Luke 15, Luke says that the younger son demanded his share of the estate from his father, and after he had secured that estate, left home and spent it all recklessly. The younger son, to me, represents the person who, instead of looking to God and his statutes, abides by his own agenda and does what he thinks is best for himself. He symbolizes the singer that thinks they know themselves better than God knows them, and therefore they know what is best for them, not even letting God have a say. These selfish characteristics of the younger brother defined my past year. Though I went to church every week and even went to extra Bible studies, volunteered at church events, I didn't know God. Though I could whip out a passage from the Bible pretty rapidly, I didn't know God's true living word. Though this kind of sounds like the older brother in the parable, I view it as the younger, because the younger brother didn't really want to be there with his father, even if he was there. He just wanted the stuff that his father gave him, and then he was gone, and that was me. I was too concerned with me. When I woke up each morning, I was thinking of my agenda, not God's agenda for me. I was thinking of what was best for me, not what was best for my neighbor and for the glory of God's name. So through the early part of this past school year, I fell into a selfish mindset with God at the back burner. It was at my Christmas Eve church service that this younger brother mirage hit me. My church music director had asked me to play a violin solo during the candle lighting, and I chose the song, "O Holy Night." It was about halfway through that song when it hit me. God came to the world and sacrificed his one and only son for me and for all of us, and I've been neglecting him in favor of my own foolish ways. As soon as I got home that night, I cried and begged for his forgiveness, hoping he would understand and be with me. Like the younger brother, who had been driven to sitting in mud with pigs, I felt dirty, foolish, and terrible. Like the younger brother, I was going to come back to my father, to apologize, hardly expecting forgiveness to come. But then hope came. During the second semester of this school year, I was invited to a youth group study led by my orchestra teacher, Mrs. Benson. I was a bit timid to go, remembering all of my foolish mistakes of the past year, but I went anyway, and I believe that was one of the greatest decisions of my life. It was through this group that the Father ran to me, as the Father in Jesus' parable did. Instead of forcing me to pay off my debt of sin, he blessed me with an incredible group of young people that have helped me rebuild the foundations to my faith. Those blessings God gave me increased when I got the chance to go to Kentucky with the Good Shepherd Youth Group to serve my neighbor. I didn't know, stepping into the van that would bear me to our lodging site, that the trip would change my life forever. I was scared to go just because I didn't know much of anything regarding construction work. But through the encouraging words of my peers, I decided to give it a try. Throughout the week in Kentucky, I kept seeing crosses in the trees and in the slabs of wood we were using to build the ramp my root crew built. I didn't really know what these signs meant until we had a prayer walk that Thursday evening of that week. During the walk, we participated in several peaceful activities, mostly to reflect on the things we had done in the past week. But toward the end, I saw a small wooden cross on the edge of the hill that the singer was located. Sensing a pattern, I meandered to the cross, and the sight God provided me was remarkable. The hill overlooked the entirety of Chavies, Kentucky, a tiny town full of light since it was evening. God was telling me that though I am a dirty sinner who is unworthy of any of his grace, he had forgiven me and brought me to Kentucky to see that fact and use the grace he daily gives me to pursue his plans for me. And through everything he has given me since I joined this youth group, that promise of his has been embedded in my heart. The younger brother was welcomed back to his home by his father, who greeted him by embracing him. Similarly, though I neglected God's plans for me for a long time, he welcomed me home with open arms and an abundance of love, forgiveness, and grace. It's amazing to look back at this dip in my faith life and then see all the gracious opportunities he has laid before me. Since then, I've started writing devotions for my family and friends, and have been asked by several of my classmates for advice about how to stay in the faith. Since I've been through that valley, I am well equipped with God's grace and truth to answer them and prepare them for their next steps. Generally, I feel like I am a more positive person to be around and talk to, all because the Holy Spirit is working within me. We are all sinners. We're all broken. We are all in desperate need of God's grace. Though I didn't see that, God was still there to lavish it upon me. And He is there also for all of us, for each and every one of you. When you feel the guilt of sin on your shoulders and don't know where to go or where to start over again, come to His altar, to the foot of His cross, and lay that burden down. Seek Him, and He will provide for you. With His death and rising again, He has crucified our sinful flesh and restored us to Himself. He constantly has mercy and constantly cares for you with His love. Though we always make mistakes, God always forgives. This is why Matthew West's words, "Grace wins every time," made such an impact for me. For each of us, no matter what we've done, God is always waiting for us to come home, forgiveness and grace in hand. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Stockdale, and I've been a member here forever, so I know most of you already. My senior year of high school did not go at all how I had planned. I envisioned qualifying for state in both of my sports, cross country and track, dancing with my dad at the Mardi Gras charity ball, learning how to build in Kentucky, and snuggling with my cat for a few more years than I did, and then graduating at a big high point in my life. But my senior year came around, and I was at a pretty low point. So when we were asked to write a final essay in English class about a personal experience, I let all of those bad feelings go. It was a very depressing and negative essay, but when I look back at it now, it still makes sense in my life, but in a different way. This is how the essay started. Life sucks sometimes. Things don't always go your way. Plans are changed without permission, and goals become erased from possibility. It doesn't matter what you want or what you predicted would happen. Life happens without any influence or say from us, and we are just along for the ride. After rereading this paragraph with God in mind, it actually makes a lot of sense, because our plans don't mean anything. There's always a reason, no matter how small, for things to go wrong in our lives on earth. We gain a new perspective and realize parts of ourselves that we may not have noticed before. God's plan is always in motion, even though sometimes we don't notice until the rain clouds have cleared. That's what this year has taught me. That's why my year didn't go the way I had planned. So I could learn this lesson, and so that I could see my life in a different way, in a more positive way. That was lesson 1. While continuing to reread the essay, I found the section about my track experience my senior year. And that's when I realized something else I believe God was trying to teach me. It went a little something like this. This was the year I was supposed to break a record or two, choose a college, get recognized in the paper, go to state, and be remembered as a great athlete at Rock Island High School. But life sucks sometimes. Things don't always go your way. Plans are changed without permission, and goals become erased from possibility. Stress-fractured femurs happen, and crutches happen. Senior seasons being cut way too short happen. And crutches make everything more complicated than they need to be. Not being able to put my body weight on my left leg was one of the hardest and most annoying processes I've ever had to be through. Taking a shower with one leg, venturing through my messy room on crutches, and eventually traveling to Kentucky are only a few of the examples of obstacles that I faced. This stress fracture also meant that my last track season was over. I would not have been healed enough at any point during the season to continue my running. The end of my year was ruined for me at this point. At least that's what I felt when I heard the news. But then something great happened. That something great was specifically in this essay, the mission trip to Kentucky. But now I realize it was all God and Him working through every part of this church. God and this church family has been the most constant and amazingly good aspect in my life. And although I was blind to see it before, I see it now. And the fast-typing rage I was in while creating this essay, I never realized that the whole point of my essay was that the mission trip turned my year around. It helps me now to see that God working through all of you amazing people has changed my life and allowed me to see how blessed I really am. It's an interesting thing to read something that I wrote myself just a few weeks ago about my own feelings and experiences can now reemerge to be something entirely new and have a whole new meaning. I now, instead of thinking of the bad aspects of my year, I think of how even the smallest joys in my life have happened one way or another because of God's work through me and all of the people in my life. Some of these joys being the mission trip, which I described in my very depressing essay as the best trip of my entire life. My youth group, which has come to be my favorite part of the week, getting to know all of you in the congregation on a more personal level than I ever have before, and even my car and graduation party have become a reality because of God's work through the church and the church family. People like my parents and the Bensons, who are just radiating faith and love all the time, even when I'm feeling down, have made me realize God's greatness. People like Lily, who we met in Kentucky, who I fell in love with in only a week because of her amazing faith and generosity, have helped me to become driven to form a stronger faith. And then there are Brett and Mike, who are becoming the new leaders of our young adult group and who I got to know more on the mission trip. They're taking time out of their own schedules to help me form a stronger faith and know more about God. And it's this young adult group that's one of the reasons why I don't doubt going to college so close to home anymore, so that while I continue to learn at school and try to figure out how to be whatever it is I decide to be, I'll still be able to be here and continue how to learn to do God's work and to be a true believer and follower of Christ. So yes, life does suck sometimes. Things don't always go your way, and plans are changed without permission, and goals become erased for possibility. It doesn't matter what you want or you predict would happen. Life happens without any influence or say from us, and we are just along for the ride. My crutches may have slowed me down, and my senior year may not have been what I expected and full of letdowns, but I wouldn't change any of it, because I've realized why I went through crutches, having to put my cat down, and not even being able to run my senior season. Because now, instead of looking for negative aspects of my life, and instead of trying to stay positive on my own, I have become open to look for God throughout my day. The goodness that comes out of the bad is just a good thing. It's not just a good thing that comes out of nowhere. It's God. Every part of our lives is God, and all of you here at this church have helped me come to that conclusion. Sometimes all the good that comes from all of you and all the unbelievably strong faiths in this room reassures me that I'm not alone. How can so many good people believe so strongly in God if God isn't real? Thank you.
Good morning. All right, so like James had mentioned, my name's Casey. I guess it was 3 weeks ago that I was baptized here, which was an incredible experience in itself. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is a little bit of struggle. And the important aspect of both of their stories is that before they were able to come to terms with what had happened, they had to struggle. For me, that struggle was trying to find a summer job. I've been working with food since I started high school. I worked at a Burger King for a while, and then a little bit of a nicer restaurant, and eventually an actual really nice restaurant with an amazing chef. But I hated working with food. It was too much stress. There was too many things that could go wrong, and it wasn't the job for me. And I'd come to learn that with all the years of experience I had gained. And as the summer started coming quicker, and the school year started to slow down, I started trying to plan out what I was going to do for the summer. I knew I loved working outside, I knew I loved working with people, and so my first goal was to try and find something doing landscaping, or just mowing grass, or just getting outside. I actually had 4 jobs lined up, just in case something came up and one wouldn't work. And all 4 of them actually fell through. As as crazy as that sounds. And I started getting really scared. You know, how am I going to save money for college if I'm working 10 hours a week, making minimum wage, and hardly doing anything? And eventually I came to terms with it. You know, I'll do what I can. I'll make the best out of the situation. I'll try and figure it out as I go along. And actually, on the day of my baptism, Scott Stevens came up to me and said, "Hey, are you looking for a job this summer?" And I said, "Yes, I really am." And I said, you know, what's the job? What would I be doing? And, you know, it'd be some light construction stuff, moving, hauling stuff around, and it was almost perfect. The only downside was it wouldn't be full-time, which was the last thing that I needed for it to be a great job. Well, eventually, my dad, who is the foreman for a landscaping company, said, I talked to the owner again, you'll be able to work down with us. We just had to let a couple guys go. So eventually, I wasn't able to take the job with Scott, but I still was able to find my job that I really wanted. And another thing that's been hard for me this summer was all the graduation parties. Everybody seems to be having one, and I've been going to a bunch of them, and it's been an amazing experience getting to see all the old pictures and all the baby pictures and the goofy pictures and even the pictures that I don't even remember taking at these graduation parties. But even though I was going to all of them, it didn't look like I was going to be able to have one because it just couldn't afford it. There was too much stuff going on. It wasn't a possibility. Well, eventually, we were able to work a couple things out with my family, and now I'm actually going to be able to have one. And it still hasn't happened yet, but I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be great, being able to spend time with all my friends and get to just hang out and have fun one last time before we all start separating, going to different colleges and different stuff as the summer wraps up. But the important thing about both of those stories is like I had said before, you have to struggle to get to the other side. It has to rain, it has to storm before the flowers can grow. And so I want to take a look at a verse in Romans 5, 3 through 5. It's on page 118 of the Pew Bibles if you guys want to read along with me. I'm actually going to read the version from an NIV Bible because I think that it sums up better what I'm trying to say. If I can find it. Not only so, but we both, where'd it go? Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. Now, when it talks about sufferance, I don't think that it's referencing losing a key in the morning when you have to talk at church and coming up the stairs and losing your car keys and then coming up the stairs and seeing them laying on the ground as you just spent the last 10 minutes trying to find them. I don't think that it's talking about, you forgot to do your homework or you forgot to turn something in or missed a deadline. When it's talking about suffering, I think it means true, real suffering, the hardships that we face every day. I went on a mission trip down to Tennessee, and one of the girls, I wish I could remember her name, but she gave a beautiful sermon about the darkness and how it seems to be everywhere, and it seems to engulf all of us at all points in time. And I always thought about looking at it that way, the darkness, and people like